Well, several of the Americans who were held captive during the Iran hostage crisis in 1979 now speaking out against a potential nuke deal with Tehran. 52 Americans held as prisoners for more than a year after militants stormed the U.S. embassy in a move that founded Iran's current rogue regime. Donald Cook was one of those hostages. Here he is being welcomed home and lifted by his friends and supporters. A great picture from 1981 as he is welcomed home, as we said. Cook was the last of the American hostages to remain on active duty. After that, he served 33 years, retiring in March of 2012. He worked as the vice consul to the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and he joins me now. Donald Cook, thank you very much for being here today. We welcome you.
Thank you for having me.
You look at this deal that the President and Secretary Kerry are working on, and you say that it needs to be not just about the nuclear part of this deal, but it has to include changes in Iran's behavior. How would you achieve that?
Well, I think that we were headed in that direction when we had the sanctions that were relaxed a year and a half ago. And people talk about, well, it's impossible to have a rogue regime change its behavior. But if you look at Libya, the sanctions we applied there eventually led Muammar Gaddafi to actually give up his nuclear weapons program, give up his chemical weapons program, his missile program, and it really did. Gaddafi was still quite eccentric in his behavior, but the regime itself had changed and really wanted to get back into the real world. They paid compensation to the victims of the Pan Am bombing, and so I think it is possible to get a regime to change. And if you just do the nuclear piece, just do this part of it, even if you get a successful deal, it still leaves Iran open as a state sponsor of terrorism. They still have a missile program, and you don't have a missile program unless you're intending to deliver weapons of mass destruction.
I mean, you've seen elements of this regime up close for a lot longer than you wanted to when you weren't allowed to leave that embassy for those 444 days. We know that the president has opened lines of communication, letters, correspondence with Ayatollah Khamenei. What do you think about that? Is it possible for the president to have established a relationship where he feels he can trust him?
Well, this is nothing new. Both Republican and Democratic administrations from the time we were released have tried to reopen a relationship with Iran. And the problem with this is that every time we do this, we give the impression that we're more anxious for a relationship. We need a relationship with Iran more than the Iranians need a relationship with us. And the Iranians are the ultimate bazaar merchant negotiators. And once you get the feeling that you're going to need the deal more than me, then I'm going to hang tough, and I'm going to get all the concessions, and you're going to make all the concessions.
Do you have any level of confidence that if they promise to stop working towards a nuclear weapon, that they're going to uphold their end of the deal?
Well, once again, it's more than just verifying, etc. It's really seeing a change in the behavior of the regime. And I think if we did see that, if there was a change in the behavior of the regime and they decided to end their status as a rogue nation, yes, we'd see that and we would be able to tell that had happened. But if you keep going on with difficult negotiations, the negotiations are only difficult because Iran doesn't want to give up its nuclear weapons program. If it decides to give up its weapons program, the negotiations become easy.
I wonder what you think about the fact when you look at the battle that's taking place with ISIS and you hear that Iran's military factions are helping to push back ISIS into Crete, and that the president, al-Abadi of Iraq right now, is welcoming that Iranian influence on the ground militarily. Where do you think that's headed?
Well, my last overseas tour was as provincial reconstruction team leader in Karbala, Iraq. And in 2008, the Iraqi army, on its own, without any assistance from us, went into Basra to clean out the Mahdi army and clean out the Iranian-influenced fighters there. And they were successful, and it was a huge black eye for the Iranians. Now we've turned it around. Now we're out of the picture, and it's the Iraqis supported by the Iranians who are moving into Tikrit, and this is only going to strengthen the relationship between Iran and Iraq, which I think is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, and we've seen Iran emerging in a strong way in so many countries across the Middle East, and Iraq may be the next one. Thank you so much. Good to have you with us today, Mr. Cook.
Thank you for
glad to
having
speak
me.
with you. We'll see you again, I hope.